All right, everyone, welcome to our tree subcommittee. I'm so happy you can join us this afternoon. We're just going to do a quick round of introductions of just your name and your affiliation, and then we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Stephanie, and I'm a senior air quality specialist in the Community Strategies and Resources Department, and I act as the liaison for the Stockton community. I think I'll go ahead and just round off our district staff. So maybe first off, I'll pass to Dave.
Good afternoon. My name is David Lopez. I'm a supervising air quality specialist in our grants and incentives department. And my team here has been in charge of developing the RFP and reviewing applications. And with that, let me pass it over to my senior, Catherine Tao.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Catherine Tao. I'm a senior air quality specialist here at the Valley Air District, and I work on in the grants department with David. I'll pass it on to C.
Thank you, Kat. Good afternoon. I'm C. Tao, and I'm an air quality specialist here in the grants program and working alongside with Catherine and David. And I guess we'll move it on to Nicholas.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Nicholas Tamayo. I am the Urban Forestry and Workforce Development Manager at Little Manila Rising, and I'll pass it to my co-manager, Brianna.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here. Brianna Garcia, Environmental Justice Communications Specialist, and I'll pass it on to James.
Hi, everyone. James Hansen. I'm with HiFi Design Lab, and I'm a planner with HiFi. Happy to be here, guys. And I'll pass it off to May.
Hi, everyone. I'm May Visco. I work as an ecological designer here at HiFi, designing a lot of our vegetative buffers and things like that. I don't really know who to pass it on to.
I'll go ahead and maybe kick it over to Mary.
Hi, Mary Elizabeth, resident.
Margot, go for it. You're unmuted.
Clifton.
Oh.
Hello, Clifton Maxwell. I'm a resident and I work for urban greening nonprofit Puentes. I will pass it to, I don't know who didn't go yet. I cut out for a little bit. Douglas, did you go?
Hello, my name is Douglas Phil. I'm a resident. And I'm here for people with disability. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you, everyone.
I can go next. Afternoon, Cynthia Pinto Cabrera. She, her, hers with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. And I think, Mary, have you gone? Yes, then we'll give it to...
I'll go ahead and go. Okay. This is, I'm Margot Prowse. I'm a resident in the AB 617 boundaries on the committee.
Awesome. And I think that rounds out our group. And of course, we have Jerry joining us from our ASL interpretation team. Thanks all for being here and just for introducing yourselves. Just to let folks know about the format, I think since it's been a minute since we've had this meeting all together, I hope you all have had a chance to review the proposals, but being that it has been a minute since we've met, our district team did prepare a quick presentation just to kind of orient folks to where we've been and where we're going, and to just high level provide some key details of the proposals again. And then after that, we'll go ahead and open up to questions from to Little Manila Rising and their project partners, HiFi. Before we get to the presentation though, I did want to actually go ahead and pass it over to Nico to just maybe let us know about some staffing changes and maybe why kind of we're seeing the group of people that we are versus maybe some of the more regular faces.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Matt Holmes, who is transitioning out of Little Manila Rising as our environmental justice director, he is going to be supporting in a contractory role as a advocacy and grant support consultant And so while he's not here today, I think he's not here for other reasons, personal reasons. He should still be involved in the process to some capacity. We're still trying to figure that out. Our new acting director isn't here today, but they will be involved in the grant process moving forward. And her name is Jasmine Leak, if you're familiar with her.
Awesome. Thank you, Nico, for letting us know of that. So I think just in this group, we won't see Matt as much as we have previously, but we have still our group from Little Manila and Hyphy joining us today. With that, we're going to go ahead and just present a few slides. And then after that, we'll definitely open it up to questions. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide, Kat? Just generally, I think this, in the next slide, you'll see a timeline that'll show some of our more recent actions. I think maybe just to orient folks to the process, we've been meeting for quite some time now, and this group has worked really diligently and hard to make sure that the project plans have been approved, as well as the RFPs before it was released. So we definitely appreciate the efforts of this group. And maybe I'll just, Kat, are we having maybe some logistical issues? That's okay. Maybe I can share my screen. Oh.
We're
Not
able to
happy.
share your screen.
Just give me 1 second and I can go ahead and share. Thanks, folks, for bearing with us as we have inevitable tech issues. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Perfect. Again, we're just going to present a few slides. In this first one, I just want to talk through some of the kind of actions that we've taken as a group and look kind of ahead to where we're going. Back in April of 2022, the project plans that you all had kind of provided feedback and reviewed on were approved by CARB. And after that, we did get feedback from you all about the request for proposals, which were open for a couple months. If folks remember, we did stagger the openings. And so we had urban greening open first and then vegetative barriers. And we did have to extend once in order to get to open it up for applicants to allow them more time to complete the proposals. And it did close in November. So the request for proposals did close in November of 2022. Once they closed, our district team kind of spent some time reviewing those proposals and also working with the applicants to ensure that the proposals were complete. And so in these last couple months, the tree subcommittee has been reviewing those. And what we're kind of looking towards is just understanding if the subcommittee is interested in moving forward with these proposals. Kind of the final step, I think, as this group generally knows, but maybe I'll say for everyone, is eventually we'll want to look towards sharing this whatever proposal that we're happy with out with the full CSC to get full CSC support, just in the way that our process is working as a community steering committee. And I'll go ahead and pass off to, I believe, Dave, who is going to continue on this presentation.
Excuse me, sorry about that. Good afternoon, everyone. David Lopez again. So just as we had last met, the subcommittee had requested to review the original proposal, and Little Manila had shared their documents with the group so that there was time for review and feedback. And as well, district staff here, we've been engaging with Little Manila to get some further information and clarification on items that is part of our RFP review process. And then with that, Little Manila just recently submitted us some updated information in regards to their original proposal. And here is kind of a breakdown of their current proposed budget with a portion of funding going towards administrative costs for both the urban greening and vegetative barriers programs. And then also looking at, in terms of project costs, kind of a breakdown of the types of materials and equipment that they'll be needing to get in terms to develop and implement this program. Some of the major items on the urban greening project is actual materials for construction and installation, such as a bobcat, which is kind of a unit with a bucket on it in the front, and then a dingo, which is a smaller unit to help dig up and remove. Yes.
Dave, this is Stephanie. I realized we actually, I think bobcats
is
and dingoes, maybe many folks don't actually know what those are. And so
Yeah.
we do have an updated version of this slide that I'm going to stop sharing. That way we can actually let folks know what those pieces look like.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit more visual aid here. So in terms of the types of equipment that is part of Little Manila's proposal is to include items such as these bobcat, a dingo, this water trailer, tree spade, and as well as a truck, some augering kits, concrete saw, and watering spike, as well as materials for surveying and analysis tools. In terms of trees, the proposal is listing 150 trees to be planted as part of the urban greening project. And we've brought down kind of the estimated quotes or estimated prices for all these units and the estimated budget amounts for the trees. Next slide, please. And this is kind of similar to what we had in the previous presentation for vegetative barriers. There's a breakout in terms of administrative costs. And then of course, here in terms of projects, there will be some costs for concrete disposal, some soil amendments, irrigation, additional analysis and equipment, and then once again, about 150 trees or plants to be as part of the vegetative barriers project with their costs broken out. Okay, next slide.
Before we go on, can I, this is
Sure.
Mark, can I ask a question? Go back to the other slide, one of the other slides. And I don't mean to be picky, but under administrative costs, it says max of 25%.
Yes, that's a good catch, Margot. And we weren't trying to hide anything from, I apologize. I was looking at the pictures, but so the original proposal, the RFP requires that administrative costs and non-construction materials be a maximum of 25% of the grant. Now, as you can see that these numbers right now are currently higher than that 25%. And as part of our review and discussions and feedback with Little Manila, we'll be requesting kind of maybe a further breakdown of their staffing costs, because we're trying to understand, and based off the proposal materials that we've received, it sounds like there is maybe some of this administrative cost is actually cost towards installation of the units. I'm sorry, not the units, the trees and some of the other materials. So that actually may not be necessarily administrative costs, but in reality, more project cost. And so we are going to be requesting some further clarification from Little Manila. So
Okay, thank you.
And this is Stephanie. And maybe just to expand on Dave's point, what you're seeing is the proposal. And so there is definitely opportunities for clarification and a better understanding of these things. So we want to make sure we're not saying like this is the final numbers you're seeing. So Margot, appreciate you kind of pointing that out.
okay, yes, thank you. And so this proposal, I'm sorry, the presentation is just kind of showing you some of these updates that we received in regards to our previous meeting. You know, we let the group know that we're working with Little Manila, and in turn, Little Manila provided us some updates to their urban greening proposal and some additional information that we wanted to share here today with the subcommittee. In terms of potential locations for the urban greening project, they have identified neighborhoods south of Harding and surrounding Victory Park, Boggs Tract, and a significant portion of the city east of the fairgrounds. There is also discussion of a My Free Tree program, which would be a tree adoption program for community members, as well as community engagement. Little Manila will actively engage with community residents by conducting some outreach and education to ensure that a project meets the needs of the residents. In terms of data collection for the project, they are presenting that they would work with HIFI to help distinguish areas that will maximize the health benefits for the trees and the community. And then lastly, in regards to necessary equipment, This equipment will be purchased for the efficient access and long-term use by its workforce. Moving on to some of the updates for vegetative barriers in their updated proposal information. Little Manila has identified a pilot stewardship program, which would maintain, monitor, and evaluate implemented projects, including local resident job training and hiring. In terms of community engagement, there would be an active engagement community with residents by conducting outreach and education so that the projects meet their needs. And then HIFI will be leading the modeling and the prioritization design of the vegetative barrier sites, with additional potential locations being identified after data collection. Next slide, please. There was a couple of questions that was presented in the previous meeting, and Little Manila has provided some responses, and we have some material to share. Little Manila has successfully launched an urban forestry program through the Transformative Climate Communities Grant, and have noted that the urban greening and vegetative barriers planting will not overlap with that ongoing TCC project. In regards to the vegetative barriers questions, the project will use data in selection, design, and characterization of the vegetative barriers, and performance will be quantified through before and after data of the efficacy of the vegetative barriers to reduce air pollution, provide shade, and lower temperatures. And I believe that is the conclusion of our updated proposal presentation.
Thanks, Dave. And I think just at this point, we'll just open it up to any questions that we may have about that presentation, or just generally to Little Manila Rising or HIFI about the proposals themselves. We'll start off with Mary.
Yeah, so if maybe we could look at the slides again. So you had segregated out some tasks. And on those tasks, it would be very helpful. Well, yeah, we could stay here. Okay, so I'm just wondering on the capital purchase of these devices here. What's going to happen to these purchase devices at the end of the project while we're here?
I think I'll let Nicholas go first, and then
Yeah, thank you, David. And thanks for the question. I think that the purpose of buying this type of equipment is to build up the capacity of Little Manila to be able to do this work even beyond AB 617. And so we're looking at the funding as really allowing us to move on from renting equipment and move on from the sole reliance on the manual labor of digging holes to meet the needs of the city and become a more efficient tree planting group, because right now we're sort of limited in what we can accomplish in a week, but the equipment that we purchase will remain Little Manila Rising's property and be used for future large-scale planting jobs as we continue to build our partnerships with the city, and they continue to build their trust in us to do the job as well or even better than their current contractors.
Okay, well, I appreciate, that, some other organization that may have some more workforce emphasis, is considering, going after those existing city contracts with those commercial companies. But what I would like to see is a comparison or a distinguishment between the cost of renting versus the cost of investment. So, if you're using this Bobcat and it would only cost you $5,000 to rent it to complete this project, that's quite a bit of a investment in a local NGO.
Yeah,
So, and if we're only getting 150 trees, I know I say only 150 trees can make a huge difference, but the city of Stockton has so much need.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think that like in particular, there's like parts of downtown don't even have the infrastructure to plant trees. And so like when we thought about renting the concrete saw rather than renting, concrete busting equipment, and the fact that you usually get one use out of a blade, we want to have the ability to be in sole responsibility for the equipment and train our crew and have the ability to do the trainings for our crew too. So that we're also just raising the skill set of the people that we're working within the community. And we can't necessarily do that with rental equipment where even for a small scale auger for a week is pretty expensive. And to do that week after week for months, we found with TCC, like we can't do that. So we will need to buy the equipment somehow eventually.
And then down that was just where it came up, but back farther along at the end, the modifications, you had some particular tasks there that you've identified. I think it was on your last slide or second to the last slide. Yeah, so the prior slide there. Yeah, so here you have these tasks here, and I just think it would be like good practice to have in this work plan to have a sub-cost. Like how, so that we can really, appreciate, the efforts that you guys will be doing. I appreciate, job training, and we do need, lots of tree people in Stockton to, take care of and help mitigate the heat island effect, which is really a true thing. And, who knows, you could be getting some contracts with COG as well, but I think that it's important that we know what these sub-costs are.
Thanks, Mary. I'm wondering, did you have, I know it sounded like you had oh, okay, perfect. I see your hand is down. We'll go to Cynthia.
Thanks, Stephanie. Cynthia with CVAC here, Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. And I have maybe a question for both Nick, Steph, and Mary Elizabeth. Is there any potential that if Little Manila Rising buys this equipment, and if they could be kind of in charge of storing it, and as other entities are looking at these projects, Little Manila could rent it out and use it out to kind of mitigate some of those issues that you're kind of raising, Mary Elizabeth, because I think, there's a lot of talk in various Valley Air districts and incentive fundings, not only with vegetative barriers, but I know it's like a really big conversation in ag equipment as well. And we've proposed this in those spaces as well. Like if farmers or folks can, buy the piece of equipment and let each other use it, kind of like a co-op style. If that's something, would that resolve your issue, Mary Elizabeth? And is that something we can do, Steph and Nick? Is that something Little Manila Rising would be interested in, and kind of keeping track who's going? And, it might lead to some cool partnerships with other entities throughout Stockton.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. It's really cool that you bring that up, because we have a close partner in Edible Schoolyard who now runs the Bogs Tract Farm location. And that's absolutely a conversation that we've had in equipment sharing and training for their urban farmers. I believe they're going to be kicking off an urban farming incubator program pretty soon. So we'd love to support that. And I think that's what we're about, right? And supporting other groups like the group in Midtown around Victory Park, we want to support and use the funds that we've gotten through TCC and hopefully through AB 617 to build it up, because we can't do it by ourselves. And I think we've all seen that the city is struggling to do that work with their current contractors. So just from our perspective, that's definitely something we would want to do.
Thanks, Nico. And maybe I'll also I know Dave was going to chime in potentially.
No, I was just going to just quickly say that's a very interesting thought in terms of comment on the rental. I'm not very. I've never really seen that in our grant programs, but I will look at it in terms of feasibility. Is if that is something that would be allowed in the grant, and maybe we can further talk with Little Manila and Nico's group to understand how they would go about it. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. This is Stephanie. I just want to make a comment that I am taking notes. I know that the rest of my team is as well, but I'm also taking notes just for us to follow up on. I also want to read a comment in the chat before passing over to Margot. This is from Clifton. Organizing rentals, picking them up, and returning them takes way too much time, especially if you're trying to train a workforce, because then the whole crew gets held up waiting on a rental. Buying that stuff is the way to go. Thanks, Clifton. And then I'll go ahead and pass to Margot.
Yeah, so I really appreciate this discussion because the equipment kind of concerned me. I thought it was interesting, and I know the group is hosting both proposals. So I understand the back and forth, but one proposal had all the equipment. And I didn't see, and I know these are rough drafts, I understand that, but I didn't see plants in the urban greening proposal. I could be wrong, but I didn't see it in the financial workup. Whereas, but that's where all the equipment was, whereas the vegetative buffer is where I saw all the plants. Now I know you're going to be using all the equipment between them, but buying the equipment, and you're talking about buying used equipment, buying the equipment means you have to store the equipment. And I don't know, I assume some thought's been put into that. I wouldn't know how you do it. So I'm a little concerned with how that moves forward, as well as the thought, because we're the air committee. When I talk to people, it's somewhere in the air quality. What is the status of a zero emission Bobcat? Does such a thing exist? Is it something you've looked at? And what about long-term leasing versus even rental? I'm just kind of curious as to what options you have looked at. And I know that's delving into the details, but I like Mary Elizabeth's idea. We could buy more trees. If we're using all our money on equipment, but not the trees, have we really made the difference? I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit, Nicholas.
Yeah, I think that our thought process was that because this is a 10-year commitment and the total is $1 million, we want to invest more in our ability to properly plant trees and maintain them. And all of the equipment allows us to do that. Planting more trees with less period of time doing the maintenance itself, and the equipment maintenance is also, requires equipment and the ability to move water around and potentially replace trees as needed. I think we felt that a smaller tree planting deliverable, but building our capacity to actually keep more of the trees alive and have a higher percentage of survivability was the way to go, because this is our ability to raise our capacity to become a group that can actually do this work on a city scale.
Can you go back to the slide that had the picture of the equipment? Because that would make perfect sense for the water trailer. And even the tree, is the tree spade hydraulic? What is that? How does that work? Is it a hydraulic machine?
Yeah, so the tree spade is an implement for the Bobcat, and it allows us to break through earth, like I think pretty efficiently.
So it works with it's a tool for the Bobcat, and it so it's not hydraulic. It's machine. It's a
correct.
mechanical.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And so this is Stephanie. Maybe if I could, maybe Margot, if I'm hearing your point, maybe you're wondering about the pieces that are machinery that could be electrified, and then has Little Manila Rising looked into like these pieces and whether or not they can be electric? Is that the question you're asking?
Especially because we're looking long term. We're looking long term. We expect heavy duty trucks to be electric within a couple of years. We're asking all the warehouses that are being built in this area to commit to that. And so I'm wondering if that is something that you've been able to look at for, I guess, the Dingo and the Bobcat in particular. The others look like tools.
If I could speak to that. So I did a little bit of digging about the electric types of heavy machinery, and it's something that is in development and you can buy them now. Like a lot of other electric things, it is more expensive at this time. What I would like to have more time to do research on is that most of these things are run on diesel. And I know for cars specifically, you can do a pretty relatively easy modification to a diesel running car to run vegetable oil instead, which doesn't help as much with the air quality, but does make it more carbon neutral for the fuel itself. I think that it's like definitely a difficult consideration, but it's one of those things where it's like, if you have a bunch of volunteers coming out every time you're trying to plant, 100,000 trees, unless those volunteers are all driving electric cars and riding bicycles, like you're still going to see some amount of carbon being used to plant these trees. And so it's like a matter of kind of thinking about if we can get a lot of trees in efficiently and save some of that manpower and make it more of kind of develop out a process that can then be implemented over and over again, then it can become easier along the road to be planting out these trees. Another consideration is if we were able to do any types of modifications to like equipment, that would have to be equipment that we own and not equipment that we're renting. So those are just some thoughts. I do think it's something that is worth more research though.
This is Stephanie. Margot, does that answer your question?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm not, it takes me a while to process. So
ponder that. It sounds like maybe the team has done a cursory look into it and the technology exists, but maybe wants more time to look into it. Is that seeing nods from me? Okay. I'll go to Cynthia.
Yeah, I have a question. So I know I can't remember where some of the conversations were on reallocating some money. I'm not sure how much money is left over from those reallocation conversations that we've had, but I'm wondering if this is something we could bring up to the CSC as a whole, as Little Manila and partners kind of look into the potential costs of an electric, of these electric like Bobcats and Dingoes, and to add more trees. Is that something that we would be able to reallocate some more money from the whole entire CERT process to be able to, be able to better afford some of those electric options, and to in the future add some more trees, as Margot was kind of suggesting?
Yeah, this is Stephanie. Definitely, I think we are, as I think this group knows, there are a couple of measures in which we have been, there is funding remaining to be reallocated. I think generally as a district, we've just been wanting to make sure that we're seeing kind of the projects that are getting funding. There's kind of a demonstrated need and success for the programs before we're kind of rushing to put money into it. That being said, I do think it could be a conversation we have. One thing I will say is I think in the spirit of the way that it was approved by the CERP, or approved by our governing board and approved by the group, the measures definitely, I think, were written more towards planting of trees in the community. But we're definitely open to kind of those conversations with this group. And then also, of course, with the full CSC.
Yeah, and sorry, I forgot to say Cynthia here with CVAC. But yeah, really interested in seeing if we can have some of those conversations with the CSC to potentially allocate some more money for those trees, because we do need some of this equipment to be able to do it. So if there's any ways we can potentially get some more of that funding for those additional trees, since as you mentioned, that's the spirit of the measure. And I think there would be some support from this subcommittee for that. But thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Go ahead, Mary.
Just unmute here. So, when I'm looking here at this water truck, and we definitely do have electric trucks now that are commercially available. And when I look here, I know that I have tried in the past to get Little Manila involved in some of my water work. And right now we have self-help enterprises that's way down south are providing services to our dry wells in San Joaquin County. And they're getting paid for this current drought through the State Water Resources Control Board, but the county is going to be preparing their own resiliency plan. And if this water truck is available to haul potable water.
I don't know that we've taken that into consideration, honestly. I don't see why not, but we hadn't given that much thought.
I know I haven't been able to engage you all at all in my water work, but when I see this water trailer and this truck, and I really think that it's important that any of this equipment here that we're paying for, is for the community good.
I would think you would have to keep it tremendously, this is Margot, sorry, tremendously clean to keep it as a potable water truck.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, it seems difficult, but I hear you that like the desire for all of this equipment to be used beyond our efforts. And I can't speak to why my organization hasn't collaborated with you in other projects, but yeah, I definitely hear you that like the thing is like nobody in South Stockton has this equipment, and like we've definitely weighed the cost and benefit to having most of the money go towards like being able to contract out the heavy work, but we have this opportunity to train people trying to get back into the workforce and become part of the community again, and we're doing a good job of that. And we thought that it would make a lot of sense to just build up our ability to train people to use this like really technical equipment, and get back into the labor force and be skilled. And I just want to put that context out there as to why we've made this budget the way it is because we have a recognizable job training program, but we don't have the equipment to offer anything other than manual labor. And I think we would be missing a major opportunity in our community to help folks and offer something unique to youth and older adults that want to do good work. And so that's a big driving force as to why we included all of this equipment, because we want to be able to train people and not just our current participants, but residents and youth from our city.
Yeah, and I would also like to just add that now having like worked on a lot of different tree planting projects, one of the really difficult things is just that if you do end up spending, all of your budget on trees, for example, if the capacity of the organization to plant all those trees is low, then maybe you get budget to plant 2,000 trees, but you can't actually plant those very quickly, and it ends up taking a long time. Whereas if we can potentially build up capacity within the organization, then it's like the efficiency of getting more trees in the ground just goes way up. And that is something that is very valuable, especially given that each of these trees is going to sequester multiple tons of carbon in its lifetime. And so that's definitely something to consider.
Thanks, May, and thanks, Nico. I do see, Margot, you're muted. Do you have an additional comment, question?
Not at this time, no.
Awesome. I did want to note a couple things. Margot, you said it a little while ago, and we had a couple other comments, but I also didn't want to lose the thread. In the original proposals, there wasn't a number of trees, but that's something that has since been updated in the couple of months that we've been working with Little Manila Rising. So I did want to highlight and note that on each slide, it'll say that, but per proposal, it's 150 tree/plants. And I'll also take a moment to read Clifton's comment. I strongly, and this is in the chat, I strongly feel an electric bobcat and dingo is not feasible and worth worrying about. For low carbon emission plantings, you ride a bike and plant 1 gallon potted trees. For urban forestry plantings with high survival rates, you got to plant 15 gallon pots. The carbon sequestered by the bobcat will vastly put weight what's emitted over long term. I think that's will vastly outweigh what's emitted over long term.
Yeah.
Thanks, Clifton.
This is Margot again, and I understand that, and I understand the desire to have the equipment. I guess in my mind, it was not in my mind that we would be outfitting a company with all the equipment they needed to move forward in this, not in only in our endeavor, but in a future endeavor. And while that's really good thinking, I just really question the use of this money to go entirely to that, especially since I do believe that zero emission is coming quicker than we think. And if you're planning on this equipment lasting for 10 years, I think you're going to be outdated very quickly. Just food for thought. I think Mary Elizabeth's recommendation that we see rental versus purchase, it would be interesting to see. And what is the TCC strictly using City of Stockton? What are they doing?
Strictly using City of Stockton, what?
For planting, for machinery, for, I mean, they're not buying the machinery.
There is no machinery in TCC. I don't, perhaps Brightview and Alfresco have their own machinery. We plant all of our trees with hand tools, shovels, spades. Yeah, everything is done by hand. And occasionally if we have our sort of policy is that if it's beyond 15 trees, which is what we reasonably expect our crew to be able to handle in a day, we rent a hydraulic auger for a few days, which runs us anywhere from $250 to $400, depending on how long we have it. I think our goal though is it's not efficient. It's also not sustainable for manpower. There's only so many holes a person can dig before their body starts to fall apart. And so we really just, I think we are trying to meet the urgency of trying to get trees in as fast as possible. But I hear you on the electric equipment, and I think we're really going to look more into that.
Or leasing. What about long-term leasing? Is that, throw that in as an option as well when you're looking at costing this out?
Yeah, that's another great idea we hadn't thought about, actually.
Thanks, Margot, for your comments. Thanks, Nico, for your response. We do have a little bit of a little bit more time here, so I do just want to open it up to see if folks have any additional questions for Little Manila Rising, for HIFI.
Well, this is Margot again. I just need to say how excited I am that this is starting to gel. I know I may have sounded a little negative today, but I'm just really pleased with all the effort and what you're looking at. And I can't wait to see the plans. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Thanks, Margot. We always appreciate your thoughtful comments. I also saw Clifton unmuted.
Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, from my experience, for those of you who don't know, I started planting trees here under a CAL FIRE project 5 years ago, and we did 1,200 trees. We did rent an auger for some things, but the list of equipment here is really what I always thought while we were planting those trees was what was needed to make a efficient tree planting system in the areas of Stockton where it's most needed. Because contractors and arborist companies, this is the equipment they have, but those companies only take contracts for other businesses that need tree work done, places where it's profitable. The reason nonprofits exist to plant trees in the hood is because it's not profitable there, but that's where the trees are mostly needed. So I think, yeah, having all this equipment would really make a change at the root of the problem. So yeah, no, it looks good to me. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Clifton.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Go ahead, Mary.
Mary Elizabeth, just a quick one. Can you elaborate on the survey analysis tools for 42,000?
I would defer to James or May for that. I believe that was if I'm correct, that was tools to help you guys do data analysis.
Yeah, that's correct.
James or May, wondering if you can maybe add a little more detail to what this might look like.
So in general, and I'm not sure about the specific line item that you guys are talking about right now, but I know on most of our projects, the survey and analysis piece is usually us taking a lot of different types of data where it's available. For example, air pollution data, temperature data, things about with like microclimates, where there is plantable land, things like that. And aggregating that data into various types of prioritization maps that allows us to choose the places where the trees will be most effective first. And then we have also been developing different types of ways of doing modeling so that we can basically create a model of what it would look like if we placed trees in that spot and model how much pollutants those trees would be taking up by being planted there. The cool thing about doing that is that we can then monitor the air of that area before and after, and we can test whether or not our models were good and thus like update greening research in general and make it more and more effective.
Thank you, May and James. Mary, does that answer your question?
Just a quick follow-up. So where you put these trees, there's going to be some kind of monitor installed that's going to be collecting data?
Well, we probably wouldn't install a permanent monitor unless that having permanent monitors was something that the community was going to try to push for. But generally, we on some of our other grants have invested money in buying monitoring equipment. And so if we were to do monitoring, we would probably come at different time measurements to take measurements at different times of day and things like that. The difficulty with having a stationary monitor there all the time is that the cheaper ones that you don't mind getting stolen aren't very good. And then the more expensive ones, it's just you don't really want to leave around. And so yeah.
Thanks, May. With our last couple of minutes here, maybe I just wanted to touch on next steps for the group. Kat, I'm going to stop your screen sharing just so I can see folks. I do just in kind of what we've been working on in subcommittees generally. I think long-term what we are looking for is once the subcommittee does feel comfortable as a group, we can bring the concept back to the full CSC to discuss. Based on maybe the comments that I heard in the notes I took, I did hear some action items for both Little Manila Rising and I think also the district to look into, including a cost breakdown of renting the equipment versus buying. What does it look like to rent or to buy zero emission versus kind of the diesel options, and then also long-term leasing issues. I heard a comment from Mary about getting sub costs for different projects, and then also the district to look into the potential for this contract to allow for renting the equipment to other groups. And so based on that, I think I'm hearing that maybe this group would want additional time to see these results and kind of process that. But I'm just wanting to see if the group agrees with this, or if maybe folks are feeling ready to bring this to the full group, the full CSC.
This is Margot. Well, I wonder if our next meeting with the CSC is April 5th. So that's 2 weeks. It would seem to me that, you know, I could be talking off the top of my head, that it could be done and we could maybe hear the results that people have come up with. I mean, it's just collecting the data and calculating the issues, right? Or are you thinking it would take longer than that, Stephanie?
Maybe I defer to Little Manila Rising also in our team of what we think is possible to get these responses. I would hate to schedule, you know, say we're going to discuss it if it's not actually feasible for us to get all of this data for people to process and then talk about.
Right.
Yeah, maybe we could follow up, Stephanie, in an email
Sure.
after I confirm with James and May and our team about what we can excuse me, realistically do. But we can follow up by tomorrow, hopefully, end of day.
Okay, but maybe generally I'm hearing from you, Margot, that you're looking to maybe spend some more time getting this information and processing it.
Me, yeah, right.
Perfect.
I'd like to see it before it goes to the CSC.
Perfect. And Mary, I see you're unmuted. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I also agree. You know, why don't we have the next month, you know, a meeting, and maybe we can have some more information. It was helpful to, you know, share the video, and, you know, it's helpful to get more information ahead of time, you know, and if we have some questions, you know, at that point, then we could also contact you and, you know, have that information available at our next tree meeting.
Perfect.
And then, you know, like things could get ironed out a little bit more. So, because I don't know, I think there's just 4, maybe 5 people here.
Yeah.
That's not involved, maybe 4. So 5, 4? Yeah.
5, sorry.
All right.
Thanks for that feedback, Mary. Well, perfect. We can work with Little Manila Rising and HIFI offline to see what the timeline is. Perhaps if it's possible, we can definitely look to the in-person meeting, but if not, we can work on planning a tree subcommittee in the next month to kind of discuss these couple of questions that came up, or these handful of questions that came up, and address them for the group.
I think knowing, this is Margot again, I think knowing what other AB 617 groups have done might be interesting too, because others are doing urban greening, aren't they? And vegetative barriers. So kind of
Yes.
how have they handled it? I'm curious.
Yeah. I wonder at our next meeting, looking to my grants team or V grants team, sorry, if maybe we can share some high level updates. I will maybe generally say they're all in different spots right now. Fresno is the kind of the furthest along, I think pretty much ready to be contracted. Shafter is a community that still kind of has an open solicitation. So they're all in different points right now, but I do think our team can look to provide some updates about how it's looking in other communities for sure.
I would also just like to chime in that Hyphy is working on a grant that is at least somewhat related to AB 617 in West Oakland right now. And would be happy to share some information about that. We're still in the early stages of that as well.
Perfect. May, if you wanted to share any of that, we're happy to also share it with this group as well.
Okay. Yeah, and I also just put my email in the chat. If people have any questions about the work that Hyphy does or questions about the science, I work with a team of people who are even like much more versed in the science than I am, and I would be happy to answer any questions people have.
Perfect. And if you did do that already, May, we're not seeing it.
Yeah, don't.
Oop, you got cut off there, Mary. I think you're agreeing though.
Yeah, I said, don't forget to click in, or sometimes I do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for the conversation and for all of your thoughtful feedback. I think we all have Little Manila Rising and then also the Air District have some things to follow up on, and we'll plan to convene again as a group. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.